Hi, Callan for 74XX back with another arcade PCB repair. This time I've got Atari's Paperboy on the bench with some weird video issues, and it's been a tough diagnosis, but I think I found the problem. Let's check it out. So what we have here is Atari Paperboy on the Atari System 2. The System 2 is a giant combination of a CPU and video board that's laid out linearly, not stacked, so it's absolutely massive. Here it is on my bench. That's the video board. That's the CPU board down there. You'll see I've got a adapter. Everything is on pin headers, so the jammer adapter looks very weird. And you'll actually see over here I have a second power supply just for the video board. This is such a power-hungry game that you really have to have a separate power supply for the video board in order to not get glitches just from low power. Today we're only going to look at the video board, and essentially we have all our ROMs down here. The Sprite ROMs we're going to be looking at are these upper 8 here, and this RAM down here. All the rest of these on top are for background, so we're not going to be worrying about those. Just this section down here. So let's start as we always do by turning on the board and seeing what we get. Now this is a medium resolution game, so I have it only on a capture device. I don't have my CRT up like I usually do. Start looks pretty good. I can see some strange lines on the left going vertically, some black lines. And here we can see the fault that was described with the board. So we basically have black lines going through all the sprites, kind of high on top and below them all, but I'm not sure how the scanning is working. I'm going to move to the test mode to see if we can isolate the layer that's causing trouble. So the alphanumeric layer is what's showing the text, obviously, and it appears to be fine. Scrolling playfield test. I think this playfield test is working properly, except for those lines on the left side that are kind of coming in and out. Even though the screen is scrolling up and down, I think it's meant to do that. And here's the motion object test. This is where we're actually having our problem. So all of these blocks should be solid, and those lines obviously shouldn't be there. Let's compare with MAME. Comparing with MAME, we can see that some things are right. It's getting the right shapes and mostly the colors, but we obviously have either black lines or orange lines through all the sprites. The manual mentions that this is also a priority test, and that the blue block that is bouncing around should go in front of some items at the top. And so it went behind the red one there and in front of the green one. So that indicates that the priority logic is okay as well. So as always, we're going to take a look at the schematics, and we're going to focus in on the motion object sections which control the sprites. So here we have the schematic package supplement to Paperboy, and we can see down here around sheets 13 and 14 we have motion object ROM addressing, motion object line buffers. We're going to be looking in that section. On sheet 13B, we have motion object ROM, so we have two identical setups here. We have these 27256 ROMs on the left. We have multiplexers here that are switched by the flip bit, so you can either go in basically straight or it can go in backwards, sent out here. And then these 194s are shift registers, so it will shift those 4 bits out in a serial manner to MOPIX, so motion object pixel 0, 1, 2, 3. If we zoom way in on the test screen, we can see something interesting, and that is that the bad lines are repeating every 4 pixels. Now, as I previously said, we're looking for something that's repeating every 4 pixels, so any of these things could prove to be our issue. For example, one of these 4 lines in between the multiplexer and the shift register, or one of these 4 shift register outputs. But let's keep looking at the rest of the schematics before we start testing. So down here are the motion object line buffers, and as far as I can tell, we've got 3 identical setups. So it's going to be buffering a line while I guess it's setting up the next 2 lines. Very interesting arrangement. But again, if we're looking for sets of 4, that might lead to our problem. We can see that well, we have counters. Counters we can always wonder about because, say if you have the second line not working on a counter, that will appear every 4 lines, for example. So I'll tell you that I went through all this. I checked all these inputs and outputs. They all seemed okay. I tried piggybacking all these different SRAM chips here, to no avail. I even tried piggybacking some of this other stuff, for example, the buffer or the latch over here, and I really couldn't find anything on this page that was trouble. So I decided to go back to the ROM page. So back on this page, I'm going to zoom in on one of these two identical units here. I started with all the common troubleshooting on the ROMs, so checking the ROMs to make sure they matched MAME, checking the address pins to make sure they had activity and that the data pins also had activity and that the output enable signals all made sense at least. And I found that there actually isn't much data coming out of these in the ROM test. For example, these 4 over here, they've got actually no data at all on here. But in the actual game, they do. So it's important to check both in the game and the test mode so you don't get a false positive. I'm going to move over so we can see these motion object pixel outputs 0, 1, 2, and 3. And I'm going to bring up the oscilloscope. All right, so I have the oscilloscope here to show you up what gave me my first clue that I'm in the right spot. And I'm going to check the signals MOPIX 0 up to 3. So let's start here. 7R number 12. We can see that there's data on that pin. You can see the width of it there. Now I'll check MOPIX 1, 7P number 12. Okay, that one has no data at all. So I was keeping an eye on this one, but decided to keep checking the other two as well. Over here for MOPIX 2, okay, that one's high as well. So maybe those 1 and 2 just aren't being used right now. And then I'll check MOPIX 3. Okay, that's a bit weird because that is really dense, especially compared to the other one. So considering that signal was very busy coming from that shift register for MOPIX 3, I thought we could be getting close to our problem because I had just tested those EEPROMs and I know that in the test mode, no data is coming out of the EEPROMs. So why would there be such a busy signal compared to the other ones? So I'm going to put my probe on the input to the shift register 3, 4, 5, and 6. Let's try 3. High. 4. High. 5. High. And 6. High. So if we go back over to MOPIX 0 once again, that's the output there. We can see that's not as busy as that other one. But if I look at the inputs, 3, 4, 5, and 6, 3, almost the same signal, 4, 5, and 6. So the input signals on MOPIX 0 are, you know, kind of the same as the output, just getting shifted out, I guess. But this one over here, MOPIX 3, has such a busy signal considering the inputs are not changing. So I want to investigate that a bit closer. Knowing that the EEPROMs are not outputting any data and the MOPIX 3 signal is a bit suspect to me, makes me think that I got to look at the two chips that are in the middle. So we have that 158 multiplexer and we have that 194 shift register. So first thing I'm going to do is short the inputs to the shift register to ground to see if that has any effect on the MOPIX 3 and the output lines. So once again, this is not the safest thing to do. You do risk the chips. Neither of these two chips are particularly rare or anything, so it wouldn't be the end of the world if I destroyed one of them doing this testing. But it should be fine to momentarily short to ground since they are driven data pins and not power rails. Once again, it's MOPIX 3 that I'm worried about here, so I'm going to ground these pins 3, 4, 5, and 6 one at a time to see if they have an effect on the test screen. Alright, I'm going to short pin 3. Okay, that seems to add more lines in the same way. Pin 4. Also lines, but in a different position, maybe right next to the ones that are permanently there. Pin 5. Pin 5 has no effect. And pin 6. Pin 6 is also causing lines. Okay, so it looks like we've made some progress there. When I shorted those 4 lines, 3 of them caused an effect similar to the permanent fault we have, and one of the pins did nothing, which may indicate that is causing the fault. So I think the question becomes, is it the 158 that has a bad output, or is it the 194 that has a bad input. Well, we know it can't be the 158 output because we had read it before and it was high, just like the other ones, and we shorted it low and didn't have an effect on the output. So it doesn't seem to be the output that's the issue. I think it's got to be the input on the 194. So let's desolder it and check it out. I've got the 194 out. Let's go check it on the test computer. Okay, chip is in the T48. Going to search for 194 and test. And we get a failure. Looks like most of it is fine, but we do have one failure there. So I'm guessing that's exactly the problem that we're seeing. So time to replace it. All right, I have the test back up. I have a new 194. Although it actually looks like the test just didn't even use that MO-PIX3 line because the test looks fine with nothing in that socket. But anyway, I'm going to put it back in the socket. It's going in right there. Being a little cheeky putting it in while it's on, but we'll survive. And no change. So that's good. I think we're in good shape here. So let's go back into game mode. So we were seeing lines before in these little previews here. Those are gone. All right, all our sprites are restored. No more black lines. I think that's it. Okay, now I've got a comparison MAME on the left and the PCB on the right. Let's just make sure everything matches up. Differences in the high score table, obviously. Okay, I think everything is looking good. The brightness is a bit off between the two, obviously, but that's okay. All right, that's going to wrap up another repair. Nice and simple once we figured out where it was. Only one little chip with one little bad input. Once again, the schematics proved to be extremely useful, and Atari ones are great because they usually tell you what is happening on every page, and so we were able to zoom right in on the motion object circuitry, find the problem, replace the chip, and we're back in action. So that's all for me for this week. At the end of the month, I'll be going to Ontario Pinfest, and I hope to be making a video there, capturing all the interesting arcade and pinball stuff, getting some interviews, and hopefully picking up some interesting stuff while I'm there. Until then.